Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Scrolls of Time by Joss Walker. Narrated by Erin Moon. Prologue. The world was chaos and blood. The torrent had become a rushing river of obsidian, studded with something that couldn't really be rocks, but felt like it. The lioness didn't have the capacity to find another name for it, though, nor could she identify the magical phenomenon that might account for the hard thing she now gripped tightly, digging in with both claws. Around her, bodies swarmed, the bodies of things like her, and the bodies of things not like her. Gray creatures with wings and horns and snarling mouths, with beaks and talons and pig snouts, lashed out against the creatures that tried to stand their ground within the torrent. A weight pressed down on her mind, so heavy that she couldn't even think of what these creatures were. She couldn't even think what she was. Rogue. Master. Those words meant nothing now. She couldn't even remember her own name. Her body struggled against her mind. She shifted from lioness to hawk to mouse to lioness again. She had no control over her being. Her spine began to lengthen, and her limbs retracted into her. She shrieked in agony. "Submit," told a voice inside her mind. The same voice that had drawn her inexorably into the torrent. "Submit to me." She lashed out in fury. Her serpent's fangs embedded in a scaly gray leg, and the wraith in question shrieked, flinging her away. She hit the torrent with a splash and fought to swim back to a rock, fighting against the flailing limbs and gnashing teeth of a dozen other rogues and wraiths. "You are mine," pressed the voice, and she felt herself changing again. Even forced to submit, she screamed her defiance. She couldn't remember who she was, but she remembered that she belonged to no one. She would not submit. Another rogue in the form of a stag bellowed and flung up his head, catching a wraith on his antlers. The wraith snarled and wrestled free. It grabbed his antlers and lifted him bodily, tossing him into the raging river. He lowed, and the lioness, now snake, heard the snap of a leg. A moment later, his head dipped beneath the surface of the torrent. His body washed downriver and was gone. "Submit," the voice growled. Another rogue hissed at the command. She was a bat, trying gamely to flutter up amidst the wraiths 100 times her size. One of them swatted her like she was no more than a fly, and she went tumbling. She hit the torrent, and it dragged at her wings, rushing her down toward the lioness, now snake's rock. A tail whipped out, coiled around the bat, brought it to safety. A moment later, the lioness, now snake, wondered why she had done it. Why had she felt the need to save this pitiful creature when she'd watched another of her kind die without much care? "Kin," a part of her mind struggled to say. The wraith that had swatted the bat fixed malicious black eyes on her. She fought against her snake form. Changing forms had always been so easy, the matter of a whim. Now it was like pushing against sludge. She shoved, feeling her rage grow. She might not know who she was, but she knew what she was. She'd always been at home in her skin, and she'd never known a time when she couldn't change into whatever she wanted. Now the struggle enraged her. She would not be beholden to one form, not by any master. She was a rogue. She was the best of the rogues. The wraith swooped down, and something in her snapped like a band. Her snake form was gone, and the lioness was back in an instant. She roared her defiance and fixed her teeth on his leg, ripping it from his measly body. She paid no mind to the way the wraith's acid blood burned her mouth. The wraith screamed and raked its claws across her skull.
"Release him,"
boomed the voice in her mind, enveloping her so completely that her jaws began to loosen before the words had fully penetrated her brain. And then it floated to the surface, as if on a bubble of air. Her name, it flowed through her like lightning.
"Release him."
But Gina La Belle had always been a contrarian. At the last moment, she tightened her jaws. The wraith screamed. Gina flipped over on top and brought her claws up for a disemboweling move.
"Release him,"
the voice in her mind howled. Pain lanced through her entire body. She was being crushed and shredded all at once. She couldn't stand it. She let the wraith go and kicked him off her rock. She flopped over onto her belly, panting. She would have no master. Rogues were the superior species. She roared. "We will have freedom," she shouted to the rest of the bedraggled rogues. "We will have no master." The wraith she'd fought snarled. He'd gotten to his feet, or rather 1 foot. His left leg stayed an inch off the ground and leaked rivers of black that hissed and spread like tar when they touched the torrent. "We can prevail," she said, her voice strong in their minds. Something landed in the torrent behind her. He was too large to comprehend, this master who'd imposed his will upon her. His legs were tree trunks that stood firm against the rushing torrent, and his body rose above them all. He had a thin gray face, slashed through in the middle by an eye patch. Horns curled wraith-like from the top of his head. His one eye blazed, turning the naturally midnight blue even darker as a huge, furious wraith advanced toward Gina from her other side. Odin Allfather reached down and picked up the lioness as if she were a kitten. She shrank in his hands. Or did he grow? And he brought her up until they were face to snarling face.
"You are full of rage,"
he said. He sounded amused. Gina growled. Words between minds were too intimate for the likes of him. As a rogue, she would speak only with other rogues.
"Soon enough, there will be space for that rage,"
he chuckled.
"Soon enough. But for now, you must keep it inside you. And you really must leave my favorite pet alone."
He gestured, and the wraith who'd attacked her flapped toward him. The Allfather touched a hand to the wraith's leg, and the river of black blood dried to a sticky tar.
"You will serve me,"
he told Gina, sending the wraith away. She could not resist answering that. "Never! I serve no man, master, or god." Odin laughed. His mouth gaped like an entrance to eternity, surrounded by teeth as clear as crystal, as sharp as knives.
"You will serve me, because I will give you what you want in exchange. You and Alastor, my blunt instruments against the meddling humans. The master, who thinks she has the power of gods."
Gina bared her teeth. This was perhaps the moment she died. She'd prepared for such a moment countless times, and she would face it with grace. "And if I refuse?" Odin's smile didn't falter. With an expression as gentle and beatific as a father's, he turned. Then he flung her into the torrent. She hit the dark magic and was sucked under immediately. It wasn't really water, but the liquid filled her, pressing against her mouth and nose and making it impossible to breathe. She fought and splashed her way to the surface to find that she was already many meters downstream. The writhing mass of wraiths and rogues continued to fight and change and snarl and scream. And barely visible on her rock, her daughter, still in bat shape, watching her wash downstream with no apparent recognition whatsoever. Odin, still smiling, watched the river carry her away. He laughed again, a booming noise that frightened all the creatures under his control, near and far. He hadn't felt such delight in centuries. But watching the scared, confused faces of his new army of rogues, his stone heart shuddered with something akin to joy, if he could feel such a thing. The checklist was filling up. Wraiths, rogues. Now he needed those infernal goddesses to bend to his will, and his war would come to an end. He would rule again, powerful and majestic, the rock against which all thought and fury crashed. Yes, he'd lost the wraith formerly known as Ruth Thorne, a pity. But what he gained by capturing the rogues and Gina La Belle more than balanced the scales. With that woman leading an entire army of creatures he could command, it had been unfathomable for so long. But now, thanks to the idiot Thorne girl, all things were possible. She had broken his chokehold on the torrent, yes, siphoned off parts of his power for herself, but in doing so, she was helping him remake the world. It was time she understood who exactly she was fighting against. Snarling animals swiped at one another, their loyalties forgotten, their very humanity forgotten. The creatures swarmed the torrent, confused and ready to fight anything that moved, until the Allfather brought his hands together and sent out a command through the thousands of tethers that connected him to each rogue. "Silence!" They stopped. Some of them sat. Some of them cocked their heads in confusion, as though they didn't understand why his word held such power over them. It was understandable. Odin had drunk the well at the base of the world tree dry, long before any of these pathetic shapeshifters had been born. It had blessed him with the ability to sort between the tethers binding these rogues to him so he could control the movements of one particular rogue or command them as a whole. It had allowed him to cast his tether spell over the whole world, combing through the population of Earth's pitiful normal people and weak adepts, and calling only the rogues to him. Here in the torrent, their magic would serve him and him alone, strengthening this pocket of the vast river of dark stars and creating a well for Odin to draw on. Almost unlimited power, until he drank the magic dry and the rogues became husks of their former selves. But by then, he would have achieved his objective. By then, he would have the world in the palm of his hand. He smiled. The pathetic so-called Torrent Control Organization had sent its best and brightest masters to defeat him, and had failed. Even their prize fighter, with all her totems and the power of the goddesses behind her, had been no match for him. She'd fallen right into his trap and led an army of rogues up to his door. Now those very rogues would be the TCO's undoing. He cast his will over the silent rogues. "Give me your power." As one, they opened themselves to the torrent, and the dark magic began to flow. Odin Allfather let his head fall back. Stars swirled in his vision, and magic filled him to the brim. He roared, and all over Earth tiny pockets opened in the air, spitting out wraiths to swoop down on the populace. "Nothing will stop me now." He did not notice the human form, tiny by comparison, crouched in his filthy shirt and camel pants, next to a defeated tigress. The man watched and waited. Chapter 1. In Nashville, Jayne Thorne, squashed on her couch next to her sister Sophia, was staring at the kitten-sized dragon that preened on her lap. With some effort, she closed her mouth. "Hayden, you know how to turn back time? Not just pause it for a few moments, but actually go back to a certain point?"
What?
Henry Thorne almost levitated out of his armchair. The dragon dipped his snout in a little nod.
That's not possible.
Henry pushed his spectacles up his nose and fixed Hayden with a severe look.
Stopping time, yes, but traveling through the space-time continuum isn't achievable with the technology we have. We can get into the torrent, maybe reversing through a portal.
Hayden snorted a tiny plume of smoke in irritation.
You say it is not possible because you have not done it,
he said in Jayne's mind.
Dragon magic is different. We have the ability to do whatever we want in time. No portals or torrent needed. It lives within us.
Jayne put a hand up to her temple. Magical theory had never been her strong suit. And since no one could hear Hayden except for her, she was left to interpret. She told her father, "He says dragon magic is different." Then to Hayden, "What are you saying? Are you from another time?"
Are you?
Hayden's round fire and cobalt eyes pierced through hers, seeming to reach down into her very soul.
You are blessed with powers that others do not have, Jayne. Is that not because you have gathered it from other times? Having totems makes you different. The goddesses you access do not exist in the now. They are trapped in their own time. You are the one that travels to them through space and time. This is not dreaming. You have engaged in this astral projection without thinking of what it is you do. And that is because of me.
He stretched, then hopped off her lap with a pleased expression, his wings fluttering. "What is he saying?" Sophia asked. "That every time I talk to the goddesses, I'm astral projecting? Traveling through space and time." Jayne's fingers slid around to her forehead. She was pretty sure she was of the now. She hadn't tried talking to the goddesses since the abysmal failure at Kiskefeld. She couldn't bear the thought of facing their disappointment. What if they wanted to take their totems back? What if they wanted Jayne to find someone more deserving? She wouldn't blame them. Odin had set a pretty trap, and they'd walked right into it. And now look where they were, huddled in her apartment, Killian in a cage going mad from Odin's siren call, Tristan and Vivienne lost in the torrent. Could things get any worse? A lone siren began to wail through the city. Jayne grimaced and reached for her now cold tea. It was as if the All-Father had read her thoughts and sent a little grating. Cities across the world had repurposed their emergency alert warning systems to calibrate for wraith attacks, and it looked like the monsters were targeting Nashville again. A moment later, all of their cell phones blared with a text alert. "Wraiths have been spotted in your location. Stay inside, keep the lights off, and do not engage. You will be notified when the area is free of danger." Jayne ought to leap up, rush out the door to meet the wraiths head-on. But it wouldn't do any good now, and Amanda had ordered them to stay put. Odin was still trying to flush them out, and the relentless attacks were meant to be a beacon. Not reacting took all of her strength. She shifted uncomfortably and tried to ignore the sirens. Even if astral projection is a form of time travel, it's not like I can choose where I go and what time I return to. Most of the time, I can't even trigger the astral projection myself. It seems a bit unreliable to make that a linchpin of whatever plan we come up with.
You would, naturally, need to learn the mechanics of time travel.
Hayden agreed. How do I learn the mechanics of time travel? She asked. Henry leaned forward, his glasses slipping down his nose.
You don't. There's no one to teach you. And we're back to square one.
He began to pace again.
The time stop I created was the work of decades, but now that we've cracked it, can we work on making it longer, maybe develop it into a time reverse? The relativity factor, it will not work,
Hayden informed him. Jayne was rather glad her father couldn't hear that, and she opted not to relay it to him. Instead, she said, "Hold your horses, Dad. How long would we need to make a time reverse work? Right now, a time stop lasts for 13 seconds? That doesn't give us much to work with."
It's all we have, Henry countered. And I know we can extend it. I know we can. And when we can take it back to when Ruth...
He swallowed hard and stopped. Jayne suspected she knew what he was going to say. He'd been trying to turn back time ever since Ruth Thorne almost sacrificed Jayne in her wretched quest for power, back when Jayne was a kid. Sophia had rescued her and fled, but Henry and Ruth had supposedly perished in a fire and been declared dead. The two girls had lived as orphans for most of their lives, had only found out recently they'd been lied to for years. Now, Ruth was dead, and Henry wasn't 100% there. That's a really long time reverse, Dad, if it can be achieved at all.
Not that way,
Hayden said smugly. Dad? Sophia leaned forward. Her blonde hair was limp and unkempt, her face sallow. These days it was a struggle for her to just get out of bed, and she kept putting her hand on her belly when she thought no one was looking. Jayne mentally cursed herself and made a note to get takeout when the alarms subsided. Sophia couldn't neglect her body, not with the baby growing inside her. This project is important to you, we know that. But what if Hayden has another way? Wouldn't it be worth exploring? She extended her hand to Hayden. You do have another way, don't you? Hayden sat up on his hind legs and nodded to her. He said to Jayne,
Your father has pursued time travel for years, and he has always failed.
He blinked, waiting for her to convey the message. She shook her head, knowing there was more.
Time cannot be reversed, the way you speak of time, of traveling through time, going back, reversing time. It is not entirely correct. Time is not like a series of doors or interconnected rooms. It is more like a path, a road. Now imagine that you have a map for this road.
Like an old highway map?
I suppose that will do. Yes. Now imagine that you can fold the map.
Hayden stared at her meaningfully, and an image formed in her mind. A large map, spread out, then the center edges moved together like a treasure map that folded together to create the X where the treasure was hidden. Folding time, Jayne breathed. Sophia's brow wrinkled. What? Folding time? How in the world do you do that? But Henry had that glint in his eye, the glint that meant he was cooking up something.
Folding time?
He pressed his hands together and put his fingers to his mouth.
Tell me more.
Jayne hurriedly explained what Hayden had shown her. Henry nodded along, then got up and started to pace again.
folding time," he mused, "which could be combined with a portal to actually travel to the place and time you need. But the mechanics, how would you do it? We don't have an effective travel spell, just portals. Can a man portal to a different time?"
Hayden eyed Jayne.
"He is getting ahead of himself."
"You know my dad." Jayne offered her father a crooked smile. Something was stirring inside her, inside all of them. Hope. Sophia's dull eyes had taken on some of their fire again, and Henry had that far-away look he always got when he was conducting experiments and running numbers in his head.
"But he will not succeed alone,"
Hayden insisted.
"For this sort of spell, you need the power of all the goddesses. You need their unique connection to time."
"So you're saying that only I can do this? No one else?" Jayne asked him. Henry stopped mid-stride. His hands spasmed. It would have looked comical, except she knew that behind his shock was a grief at watching one of his long-held dreams crumble. Henry's quest to time travel had driven all of his research for his entire adult life. She'd have to comfort him later. She got down from the couch and crouched before Hayden. "But if I've apparently time-traveled whenever I've visited the goddesses, why didn't they give me the power before?" Hayden nuzzled her hand, and she scratched him behind the ears. His eyes reduced to slits, and he made a noise that was almost a rumbling purr.
"You cannot get the power of folding time from the goddesses you know. There are others, goddesses who see the fate of every person on earth before they are born. They can bestow a great power, or take it away. They grant familiars to those who have the potential to raise them, and they snip the threads of fate as they are woven. They are Odin Allfather's greatest enemies, for they know how this time will come to an end, and who will be responsible for it. These are the goddesses you must find and free. In return, they will grant you the totem of time."
Jayne groaned aloud. Not another totem. Sophia and Henry were watching impatiently. Sorry. Hayden says there are time goddesses we can go to for help, and if they grant me the time totem, maybe I can learn how to fold time. She sighed. "Another totem," Sophia echoed. "Is this the last one, Hayden?" He nodded. Sophia and Jayne exchanged a look. How far they'd come, these two powerful women, now charged with saving the world from a madman's diabolical grip. Jayne felt a thrill when her sister squared her shoulders and nodded. Her golden aura began to glow. Hope was a powerful thing, a drug as addictive as they come. Seeing it fill her sister, Jayne fiercely vowed to make it all worth it for her niece, for them all. Her totems flared in response, glowing on her forehead, and Sophia, seeing them, caught her hand. "Well, it might be hard, but it's the first lead we've got on something that could help us. Maybe Jayne could fold time so that Odin never won the battle at Kiskefeld, so that the rogues never came under his influence." Tears swam unshed in her eyes.
"Perhaps,"
Hayden replied.
"There are rules to traveling in time. I do not pretend to know the details, but the Norns will reveal all if Jayne Thorne is worthy."
He put a tiny scaled paw on her wrist.
"And you are worthy."
"Thanks." Jayne smiled at him. "The Norns," she told Sophia and Henry. "We need to find out everything we can. about the Norns. Chapter 2. A huge rhinoceros lowered his head and scraped his feet against the ground. All around him, the once lush grass of the meadow had been ripped.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?